Good afternoon. So thank you all for sticking it out and waiting for me to come up here. I just wanted to make a quick reach out to the woman that shared the current experience that she's going through. And one of the biggest things that I say that I had to learn myself is, number one, on top of anything that I've completed, I'm a domestic and sexual abuse survivor, so I understand what it means to be on this side of it. You touched my heart today. But I wanted to let you know that there is hope on the other side of trauma. And every day that you get up and you do what you need to do, you've been 100% successful. And that's what survivors need to understand, is that one of the biggest things is that when they're in the midst of the situation, they actually are the strongest, because it takes strength and determination to get up every day and annoy the abuser that you're still gonna put up with it one more day. And you do it over and over again. But the thing comes is that when you leave, all of a sudden, all what I call it is like living in the silence, is that you all of a sudden, everything that's been said comes back, and you are filtering that in your mind, and you start to lose that strength that it took to get the courage to leave. So I want to tell you is that is horrific and aggravating and frustrating and overwhelming that you feel every day, that you are successful, you are being heard, you are a person, and you have value. And it will get better. I promise you, it will get better, because I was in that position, and I was in 2 domestic abuse marriages, and I found my way to a PhD in criminal justice and working with people all across the country. So do not doubt yourself. And so I just wanted to let you know, from one survivor to another, you got this. Even when you don't, you do. So now that I've got that out of the way, I can pull myself together a little bit. I always say is that there's power in numbers, and we're all part of a club that we wish we didn't have to be part of. So I think Dr. Esmail kind of gave me accreditations for everything that's up there, so I will pass by that. Okay. So what I want to go over today is that there's been so many discussions today between the different boards that were up here, and they talk about, domestic violence. And one of the biggest things that with so many organizations and shelters that are across the country is that we to unintentionally give a disservice to what domestic violence is that they put the face out there right when October comes along. It's domestic violence awareness month, and then they have the picture of a person who has been hit and everything else. But before that it got to that point, there's what we call non-physical domestic violence. And with non-physical domestic violence, is that we will get into a minute here, is that it is 90% of the abuse that goes on before it gets to that 10% of the physical violence. The physical violence is where the devastation happens, but it's the non-physical that is the perpetrator and the wheel, the gerbil wheel that continues, that they deal with day in, day out. So, and that is one of the reasons that my driving force of being part of this is that when I went through my own personal journey, is that my first ex-husband, it took me 10 years and 3 times of filing divorce before I was finally successful in leaving. So it's not as easy as one might seem as to why somebody would not leave. And in that journey, I realized is that I wanted to be the voice for those who are learning to find their voice. And that is my reason in participating in every single thing that I do for survivors. I have developed almost 100 trauma recovery programs that I work with victims. I work with the court systems. I work with attorney offices to help clients or victims be able to learn how to put all their information together, how to successfully be able to go in front of these judges, be able to go in front of the police officers and start getting things completed. So non-domestic violence, over 50% of victims do not report their abuse. And there's good reason for that, because of the fact that when they call, that they don't get the response that they're looking for from a police officer. And they understand what the ramifications are when that officer leaves. So, personal story is that I had my ex who, while knew that an order of protection was trying to be served on him that day, after the 2 previous nights of having officers at my house every 3 hours on those 2 previous nights, and nothing had been done to them or to him. So I got an order of protection. They were trying to serve him. He was avoiding it. The officers, at the time, the last time they came before I got the order of protection, they said, we're not leaving here until you have somebody here that can be here with you. So I had somebody here at the house with me, and it was just as evening was getting dark, and unbeknownst to me, come running, bashing through the French doors with a rock in his hand. I had my ex barging at me, trying to take that rock and beat my head in. Fortunately, I had a friend there who took her own safety into forgetting about it and got in the middle of it, and I wound up having 4 cop cars with sirens going approach my house. I was able to run and lock myself into the master bedroom and in the walk-in closet, and I'm on the phone with 911, and the police officers come in and they go to arrest him and they go to take him out. My friend, being on the outside there, said to the police officer, while you're taking him to jail, do you mind serving him the order of protection that she got earlier today? The officer said, oh, it's an order of protection, downgraded the call, unhandcuffed him, and gave him time to collect his belongings and leave. That is a perfect example as to why a victim is afraid, because what is the next step? What is going to happen? And what message has it sent to the abuser? That's fine, go ahead, call the cops. No big deal, nothing's going to be done. So that is why you have such a huge percentage of victims who are not reporting, is that is an extreme example. But then there is instances where it is the nonstop non-physical abuse that is going on day after day after day. It can, and we'll get into it in a second here. Oh, I forgot I had this. There is other forms of domestic violence other than physical abuse. There's emotional, psychological, coercive, financial, sexual, and court abuse. And the result of those behaviors is stalking, manipulation, social media, and using the children. Some of this have been touched on, but by both of the panels that were here today. Excuse me. So, emotional and psychological abuse has to do with degradation. It has to do with threats, blame. So, a perfect example of that would be is that my first ex-husband that I had my children with, my ex-husband, he would always go and cash his checks every week and not just put them into our joint account. And he would decide what he felt was reasonable to offer the family. Many times it was $0, sometimes it'd be $80, maybe $100. But then he kept using the joint account where my checks were going in, and he would deplete it. And he was an alcoholic, and he became addicted to pain pills, so you never knew what you were getting. So there was one Sunday, I can't remember the age of my son is, but he was young, and he said, I grew up in Michigan, so where I was in the Detroit area. So he said, well, why don't we go to the Detroit Institute of Art and take him there for the day? So we went to go, and he went to stop at the ATM, and there was no funds in there. So then he came back to the car, and he said, oh, Zach, I'm so sorry we can't go today. Your mom drained the account, so now we don't have any money to go get tickets for that. So that would be an explanation of emotional abuse. It's emotional, it's psychological, it's financial, it's very coercive of the type of things that went on. And it doesn't seem like that's big of a deal, but I always say is that it's kind of like that Chinese water torture, is that one drop, 2 drops, it's not a big deal, but it's the continuous cycle of the drop after drop after drop after drop after drop that becomes very, very difficult in order to, I call it like crazy making. And also the other term that I would use is that I always felt like I was doing, what do I call it? I was like dissecting my conversations every single day. I would go through and I caught myself there. So I felt like I was doing an autopsy every day of like, okay, he said this, I said this, he said this, I said this. Like, at what point was it my fault that this happened? And so that gets overstimulating, and that is the emotional and psychological abuse where you don't even know if you are crazy, if you're at fault, or if you are just dealing with somebody who has an issue, especially when you take into account that when the police come, there's nothing that they happen to do. So I can tell you that with my second ex-husband, I had over almost 300 police reports, and not one time was he actually arrested and anything done. And when I went to court, in family court, the judge did not even look at any of those 300 police reports and had the audacity to say that we needed to stop being pretentious between the two of us in order for that divorce to be final. So not only do you have this person doing it, but you also have the system who is not backing you up and supporting you. Now, time with the education and a program like the Family Trust situation, the Family Trust Center, hopefully we can start seeing changes in the legal system. One of the things that because of the amount of non-physical violence that goes on, I have actually worked with police departments across the country of how to approach and be more effective when you actually go on a call, especially when it has to do with non-physical abuse. Is that, so sorry. You need to treat, many times I say to them, if you were on a call and there was a 5-year-old there, how would you approach that person? And they said, well, I would come to their level. Exactly, right? When you're dealing with somebody who is of a youth mentality, you want to make it where you're not scary. You want to make it where that they feel comfortable approaching you. You want to make it where they feel that they can trust and give you information. And you don't want to talk above their head so that they can understand it when you ask them questions. I said it is the same thing when you are going on a scene, is that you are showing up, you are a position of power and authority. They've already dealing with the fact of somebody who has complete control over their life on a daily basis. So you show up, you have a badge that shows your authority, you have a gun and a baton on your belt, and your first comment is what's going on here? That is a position of control of where a victim is used to having that type of control over them, where they feel like they cannot speak, that they cannot talk. And then you have the abuser right across from them. What is the potential that you're going to get the full story of the background and the ability of understanding the, number one, there's a history before you showed up at this call today. What is that history? What have you looked up, as you're there? Have you looked up to see if there's been other police reports done? And I've had many officers tell me they had never thought about that before, and that it has changed the thought process of when they go on scene and they speak with the victims. Because if you take a victim completely away where they cannot see the abuser, and you sit down with them, and how about the first word out of your mouth going, you know what? Today seems like it's probably like one of the worst days you've experienced. Show them empathy. Give them an understanding that they have somebody they can reach out to, that they can touch, that is going to actually want to hear what they have to say. That makes a difference in the information and the ability for an officer to be able to successfully do their job in a very thoughtful, strategic way. And hopefully be able to make a better decision of actually following through and be able to arrest them and take them away from the situation to give the victim. Stop making the victim the person responsible for having to take action versus the abuser who gets to remain and not have to change anything in their daily lives or the protocol that they're following. So on sexual coercion, my first ex-husband, for many months before I just finally left for the last time and for good, is after my daughter was born, is that he used to kidnap my kids and hide them. And then he would come home when there was still this thing that they called like a landline, that those who are old enough know what that is. And he would cut the telephone lines outside the house. And then he would come in and he would rape me for hours until he believed when I told him that that I loved him, that he believed it enough. And at that point, then he would take me, which my kids didn't know the difference because maybe it was at a friend's house or a family member's house, but I didn't know. And that's the key, is I didn't know where my children were. I went out for a walk and I came home and everybody was gone. And I didn't know where they were. The last one here is something that is very much a huge issue. The other survivor here today was explaining is about abusing the court. They use it as a weapon because they no longer have control over you, but they do have control over the court because you can continually file petition after petition after petition after petition, and it has to be heard. That it's part of the system, is if a petition's filed, it has to be heard. So it puts the survivor in a fight or flight mode all the time, as having to always be in that constant situation of like how am I, like what am I gonna do? How am I gonna do it? How am I gonna represent? And as the judges were talking today, is that courts cannot make decisions based on emotion. They can only make decisions based on fact. And if you have not been able to take the time to put all that together, then it makes it very difficult in order to, especially if you don't have a lot of time to do it, and if you don't know how to do it, it makes it very difficult to be able to put yourself together. And when it's continuously happened, it's hard not to be emotional, but it's having to learn how to put it together. I've worked with many, many victims of how to put a binder together to go to court and go to the police station so that they can still go from a from an emotional to a factual and have a case that actually can be successfully heard. As we were talking about some of the behaviors that come from it, my ex stalked me for over 5.5 years. And that was one of the biggest driving forces why I worked so hard to legislate with all the representatives and talk to them about the issues that social media has provided in creating a whole new market for stalking. So my ex, he would follow every person that was on there, and he created court documents, and he would send them to people in my networking groups. He would send them to organizations that I was working with. He would send them to my board members, and he would send it across the country. And he thought he was, being sneaky, because he found somebody that I knew 25 years ago from Michigan and used their address in order to send it to people. So I would wind up going to networking meetings, and people would say, "Hey, Kim, can I see you afterwards?" And I'm like, "Sure." And the next thing I know, they're pulling out an envelope because he's sent him documents. Or he would put our court documents up on the internet. Or he would have my backyard filmed and put it up on the internet. So I felt like I couldn't even escape him. I felt like he was stalking me right through the computer that came to me. I'll just go through this real quick because they kind of touched on it when the judges were, is that victims only sign their complaint of abuse 48% of the time. The dismissal rate is at an all-time high at 70%. These statistics are based on a national basis, not on a state basis. And only 40% of the time is the abuser actually detained. I can't see all the way over to the other corner, so let me get to my page so I can see it. Oh, I can't see it, so let's see. Only reports are taken 78% of the time, and the first time that you call on your abuser, only 39% of them actually get arrested the very first time. So it's very difficult when we come to talking about domestic violence, is that it continually puts the burden on victims. The victims have to continually prove the situation versus the abuser. By the time they get to criminal court, there is a tremendous amount of history that has happened, that nothing has been done. And so that's why you have that continuous escalation. As I was saying, the continued escalation is you have the cycles of abuse. You have victim blaming, and that's the tension building phase, is that everything is the victim's fault. The abuser will continually tell you, it's your fault, if you hadn't done this, if you hadn't done this, if you hadn't said this, if you hadn't told somebody this, if you hadn't called the police, if you haven't. So that is where the tension is building up. My ex used to do this thing where I would lock myself in the master bedroom all the time, and he would be watching TV in the front room, and he would come and he would plow the door in and start screaming at me and go back and watch TV and come back and forth. That's tension building. That is him revving himself up to the point where it comes to the incident. As I shared earlier, he tried to kill me. That is the next level of the continual tension building process. And it can be at all different levels. And then the reconciliation. So my ex was my second husband was an alcoholic also. And he sent out a group text to my family and his family and said, I just want to say I'm so sorry that I am the reason that Kim feels so unsafe in her home. And I'm going to go and get help. That was his way of trying to make me feel better, like he was somehow taking accountability for what he was doing. It was a slap in the face. I thought, you got to be kidding me. And I can tell you that it didn't last long. It lasted about 3 weeks. And then you have, after reconciliation, the calm. This is the point where, when I stood up and I was talking about the Family Justice Center, is that's when it's really important, is that when you feel calm enough that you can actually say something, that's when a conglomeration of what they offer is so important. That's why I developed the trauma recovery program, because that's when we need it. That's when it needs to come into effect. That's when they can start to be heard, they can start to be validated, they can start to actually go through the process of identifying who they are as a person, because beforehand, they're identifying as somebody who is a victim of just trying to unpack what's happened day after day after day. This is why it's so important that a facility like the Family Justice Center exists. It costs the federal government, on a federal level, taxpayers' money, $82 billion a year for health care for victims and their children, because of the fact that they are normally cut off from any health insurance in any way to be able to take care of themselves. 82% of the victims are unable to afford an attorney. It normally costs between $50,000 and $300,000 for somebody who is dealing with a court abuser, of being able to try to get custody of their children, to be able to finally be able to get their divorce. And the unfortunate part is that those who go pro se, only 14% of the time do they wind up getting a judgment that goes their way, because they do not know how to file correctly, they don't know how to chronologically approach and present their case. And 60% of the victims lose their job within the first 60 days of trying to leave the abuser, which is another reason for recidivism of those victims who go back to their abuser, because what can they do when they don't have a job and have no income coming in? So to wrap things up, it's important that there is domestic abuse advocacy to help you get through the process. The order of protections, I helped pass a bill that in the state of Arizona made it where order of protection was valid for 2 years versus 1 year. I actually have a bill that I've created right now that I'm looking for support on. Will make it where there will actually be templates made that will make it where judges can look at it correctly so that they can understand what's being written in there and be able to have, there's a difference between a period and a comma. I've been there. I've had an officer tell me if it had a comma, I could arrest him, but because there's a period, I can't. So I want to make sure that that is taken care of. Also, the bill includes too is that instead of having the sheriff's department have to find a person who understands that they're trying to get served, that it will come automatically through email and text. And if they get all right to the house, it will come out in red letters and says, do not go home. So that is what I'm currently working on in behalf of the advocacy for survivors. Recognizing abuse, within a family. Where is this, as a survivor, I know that it stems from my childhood. So I understand how I got from point A to point B. And that is something that we need to be looking at too. Not for just the abusers, but for the survivor, so they can understand the pattern, so that they can move forward in a healthier way. So lastly, I took an excerpt out of an article I wrote. I also have a book out too, those who are going through divorce. It's just coming out, Keeping Your Voice and Finding Your Way Through Divorce. And it has all the templates and resources and forms and checklists and stuff. But let me leave you with this, is you never know who you truly are until you know who you are not. Where does one begin when you have been programmed to believe the following? I must have been provoked by the abuser. You should easily be able to leave the abuse. I must have wanted to push it again and initiated the abuse. Total miss. How can I know what I can be when constantly told what I am not? As a survivor of trauma, many times I knew I did not want to be a victim anymore, but did not understand who I was not. Almost 99% of trauma victims after leaving are caught in the midst of who I was told I was versus being secure in who I know I am not. Less than 5% of women have belief in who they truly are and who they are not. Never give up on yourself. You are greater than you believe or told you couldn't possibly ever be. Thank you.
Let's give our keynote speaker a round of applause. Thank you. At this time, we are going to hear from Pastor Michael Raymond and Reverend Dr. Calvin Woods. Can I give you this one, Pastor Raymond? Pastor Raymond and Pastor Woods are with us every year. And so I thought it was important to have you all participate on the panel a little bit more in depth, because we had a survivor that came and spoke to us several years ago, and she shared how she was abused, but that her then boyfriend went to the church and cited all types of scriptures and saying how she was supposed to forgive him for the abuse. And then she met with the pastor, well, he met with the pastor and asked if he could apologize to her in front of the entire church. So the pastor believed that was a good idea, believed he was sincere. So eventually they got back together, everything was fine. And within maybe about 3 weeks, she said the abuse started all over again. Ultimately, this is the fast version of the story, he ultimately, after they married, because he apologized from the church, he married her. He thought that she was leaving him because the abuse was starting all over again. And he saw a U-Haul truck behind her car and thought that was her moving and leaving. He followed her to a relative's house. He shot her uncle, trying to shoot her. She ran in the house and her son was in the car, and he shot her son and killed her son. And her son was 14 at the time. And so I wanted you guys to just come and share with us a few minutes from what you all see from the clergy aspect.
Well, first of all, it was the wrong approach the pastor took. Being a part of situations where I've seen domestic violence, family members and friends, that's the wrong approach to take. You must always listen at both sides of the story, and you definitely must, without a doubt, understand that they are victims. When they're victims, you got to address the needs of the victims and protect them from the perpetrators who are causing the abuse. Therefore, the church is a place where we show love and not abuse, not pain. And if we see that someone is being abused, it's our job as a church to address the ones who's doing the abusing, because that impacts the entire family. So the way the pastor approached it, he should have got more professional help of those who understand what domestic violence is and part of what's going on with them. It's going to save that family's life in a great way. Pastor Raymond.
Yeah, I'm Pastor Michael Raymond, and I am a group facilitator also with those perpetrators that commit domestic violence. And if that happens in the church, yeah, it's approached wrong. And Dr. Woods is correct on every level. They need professional help. And with me, not at my just say if it occurs at my church, which we have, I have to, it's accountability that has to happen. Accountability has to happen. You have to talk to them separately. You need to get, so she can feel safe. I heard that even stated earlier in this conference. But matter of fact, I'm just so glad we're having this again, you know, but the main thing is to get professional help for them, because, you know, reading scriptures and prayers may be for your soul, but your mindset, there may be an imbalance, a chemical imbalance. Something's going on, you know, that they're going to need help, you know, and that's where, you know, that's what has to happen, you know, that professional help has to come in. And once, even with church, I had a pastor call me yesterday with two incidences, because I get calls all the time, but of domestic violence. And but when I get those calls, you know, one of the things I found out is what churches can do is, if it's a single person, say if it's a lady, or there's a survivor that's a woman or a man, because we do have men survivors, you know, that there are groups within the church that they can be a part of, where they can, because others are going through the same thing, and it's important that churches have those kind of group settings where there's people that are going through that. It needs to be discreet, especially with domestic violence. But that's correct. I don't want to go far off the path with my answer, but that's a great point. Great point.
Been a pastor where my oldest sister and even her daughter has been victims of domestic violence. My attitude toward that is totally different. I understand that when they find themselves in that position, they need a place of safety. So therefore, when they're having brothers, guess what? When that happened one time, we let that brother know, don't ever do that again. If you got 7, 8 of us, we'll deal with. And I tell you, he never touched her again. Now, as a result of that, her daughter's in a relationship with a man who's doing some of the same things. And our job is to confront him one-on-one. Let him know that she has relatives who will support her and will not tolerate this. And so when they understand that there's a fear of God in that, so brothers go deal with them, it changes everything. And sometimes you see these people going through this thing and nobody says anything. We need somebody to step up and confront them and let them know. We don't play, homie don't play this. If you do it again, we go deal with you. And when they understand that we're serious, it changes everything. So our job when you come to church should be a place of safety, a place of love. If someone's being abused, we let them know we don't play that. And if you want to be here, you got to get yourself together. And if you ever allow this violence to come in, you'll be confronted. Now, the police is there, but sometime before they get there, we need to see some strong brothers who go stand up for our sisters, let them know we love you, we value you, and we will protect you at all costs. That's what I have to say.
Amen. Amen. That's key. Protection at all costs. We have to support groups, strong pastors, and because we do this, and it's a must. I'll tell you, people that we have to stick together with this, because there's a lot going on, and when somebody finds out. When you find out that there's as leaders, when we find out that there's a situation going on of domestic violence, the number one thing that I find that's happening when I look at the couple, when I meet with them individually, is that control piece is off the rails. Control. Domestic violence stems from power and control. And that control piece is they're just trying to control everything, like you heard the ladies, everyone that spoke today. And that's something that has to be broken down. Even in our men's ministry group at our church, there are men that have gone through things, I know, but the main thing is, and they're not even with I know one of them is still with the person, but one of the things is that teaching them about power and control. When they go to their classes, they don't go to classes with me. I don't allow that to happen. Them to go to classes with me. I allow them, they got to go and get help. I know them already. And when you know a person, that causes a conflict. We don't want that, especially in this arena. But that control is something, ladies and gentlemen, if you see it, she had it up on the screen too, Doc. She, had the different areas on the screen. That is something that is really, that's what they thrive off of, So I want you all to be encouraged to know that the church is standing with you. But if you know somebody going through it and they're part of the church, and they don't, and 9 times out of 10, the pastor's not involved with this like we are. I want to tell you, let your friend, your sister, your brother know that they need to get professional help immediately. And the hardest thing is to remove themselves, to remove them from that environment. Because this control has been going on for so long. As I heard Doc say, talk about it, others talk about it. So, they need help though, because the pastor doesn't have all the answers, but the churches that do have